The scorching sun beat down mercilessly on the Nevada desert as Winifred James wiped sweat from her brow, her vision beginning to blur at the edges. She had been traveling for days, determined to reach Yerington before her supplies ran out. But the unforgiving summer heat of 1879 had other plans for the 23-year-old schoolteacher. The small water canteen at her side was nearly empty, her horse was struggling, and the persistent headache that had started that morning was now a pounding agony. Isaac Lawson guided his horse along the dusty trail leading back to his ranch outside Yerington. At 30, he had established himself as one of the most respected cattle ranchers in the territory, though few knew the loneliness that haunted him in the quiet hours. His weathered hat cast a shadow over piercing blue eyes that had seen their share of hardships since he'd struck out west from Pennsylvania 7 years earlier. He spotted her from a distance, a figure swaying precariously atop a chestnut mare. Something about the rider's posture set alarm bells ringing. Isaac urged his horse forward, closing the distance between them just as the woman's body went limp. He watched in horror as she slipped sideways and collapsed in the dust, her horse nervously stepping away. "Miss, miss," Isaac called out, dismounting before his horse had fully stopped. He knelt beside the unconscious woman, immediately noting the unnatural flush of her cheeks against her otherwise pale skin. When he pressed his rough palm to her forehead, he pulled back in shock. Her skin burned like hot coals. "Fever," he muttered, looking around the empty landscape. They were at least 10 miles from town, with nothing but desert scrub and mountains as far as the eye could see. Winifred's eyelids fluttered momentarily. "Water," she whispered, her voice cracked and faint. Isaac quickly brought his canteen to her lips, supporting her head as she took small sips. "Easy now. What's your name, miss?" "Winifred. Winifred James," she managed before her eyes rolled back and she lost consciousness again. Isaac assessed the situation rapidly. The woman needed a doctor, but Yerington was too far for her to ride in this condition. His own ranch was closer, about 8 miles east, but still a considerable distance. There was no choice. She wouldn't survive out here. With a decisive movement, Isaac lifted Winifred into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body radiating alarming heat. He secured her horse's reins to his saddle, then carefully mounted his own horse with Winifred cradled against his chest. "You'll be all right, Miss James," he said, though she couldn't hear him. "I promise you that." As Isaac began the long journey toward his ranch, the weight of the unconscious woman against him filled him with an unfamiliar sense of purpose. The sun continued its merciless assault as he held her securely with one arm, the other controlling the reins. Both horses moved at a careful pace, the sound of their hooves creating a steady rhythm against the hard, packed earth. Isaac studied Winifred's face as they rode. Despite the flush of fever, he could see she was beautiful golden hair escaping from what had once been a neat bun, delicate features now tense with illness. Her clothing suggested she wasn't from these parts, too fine for the frontier, though dusty from travel. Every mile felt like 10 as Isaac continually adjusted his grip to keep Winifred secure and as comfortable as possible. His arms ached, his back strained, but he pushed onward. Twice he stopped to give water to the horses and to coax a few drops between Winifred's parched lips. Each time she remained unresponsive, her breathing shallow and quick. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains when Isaac finally spotted his ranch in the distance. The modest 2-story house stood as a beacon of hope, with the barn and corral beside it. His ranch hand, an older man named Hank Miller, spotted their approach and came running. "Mr. Lawson, what in tarnation?" Hank stopped short when he saw the woman in Isaac's arms. "She's burning up with fever," Isaac explained, his voice hoarse from hours without water. Found her about 10 miles out, collapsing off her horse. Need to get her inside and cooled down. Then one of us needs to ride for Doc Fletcher. Hank immediately took the reins of both horses. I'll take care of these beasts. You get her inside. Isaac carried Winifred across the threshold of his home, her body still radiating heat. The house was simple but comfortable, with a parlor, kitchen, and Isaac's study downstairs and 3 bedrooms upstairs. He headed directly for the stairs. "Miss Abigail." Isaac called out, knowing his housekeeper would be preparing supper. A plump woman in her 50s appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes widened at the sight of the unconscious woman in Isaac's arms. "Good heavens! What's happened? She's very ill fever. I need you to prepare the guest room and bring cool water and cloths, and send Hank for the doctor immediately." Miss Abigail nodded and hurried upstairs ahead of him, quickly turning down the bed in the guest room. Isaac gently laid Winifred on the clean sheets. "We need to cool her down," he said, his brow furrowed with concern. "And she'll need different clothes. These are soaked through with sweat." Miss Abigail assessed the situation with practiced efficiency. "I'll take care of changing her, Mr. Lawson. You go send Hank for the doctor and fetch me some cool water from the well. It'll be colder than what's in the kitchen." Isaac nodded gratefully and left the room. By the time he returned with a bucket of well water, Miss Abigail had changed Winifred into one of her own clean nightgowns. "Poor thing's burning up something fierce," the housekeeper said, taking the water from Isaac. "Did she tell you anything?" "Her name, where she's from. Winifred James is all I got before she passed out again." For the next hour, Isaac and Miss Abigail worked together to bring down Winifred's fever. They placed cool, damp cloths on her forehead, wrists, and ankles, changing them frequently as they warmed from her body heat. Isaac sat beside the bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, feeling strangely protective of this woman he'd found in the desert. The sound of hooves announced Hank's return with Dr. Fletcher. The doctor, a man in his 60s with a white beard and kind eyes, entered the room carrying his medical bag. "Well now, what do we have here?" he asked, immediately moving to Winifred's bedside and placing a hand on her forehead. Isaac explained how he'd found her collapsed in the desert heat, miles from town. Heatstroke, most likely, combined with exhaustion and dehydration, Dr. Fletcher said after examining her. "You did well bringing her here and starting to cool her down. I've seen many not survive such conditions." "Will she be all right?" Isaac asked, surprised by the intensity of his concern. "Hard to say for certain, but she's young and appears otherwise healthy. Keep doing what you're doing, cool cloths, and when she wakes, water mixed with a bit of salt and sugar. Small sips only at first." The doctor prepared a powder from his bag. "Mix this with water when she wakes. It'll help with the fever." Isaac nodded, memorizing each instruction. "I'll return tomorrow to check on her. Send for me sooner if her condition worsens." Dr. Fletcher packed his bag and turned to leave, then paused. "It was good you found her when you did, Isaac. Another hour in that sun and we'd be having a very different conversation." After the doctor left, Isaac insisted on taking the night watch despite Miss Abigail's protests. He brought a chair beside Winifred's bed and settled in for the long night ahead. Outside, the desert cooled rapidly as darkness fell, and a gentle breeze moved the curtains at the window. Isaac studied Winifred's face in the soft lamplight. Who was this woman? What had brought her to this remote part of Nevada alone? The questions circled in his mind as he dutifully changed the cool cloths and occasionally moistened her parched lips with a few drops of water. Sometime past midnight, Winifred stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes the color of summer sage. Confusion clouded her face as she tried to focus on her surroundings. "Water," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Isaac quickly reached for the glass he had prepared with the doctor's powder. "Here, but only small sips," he cautioned, gently lifting her head. She complied, then looked at him with questioning eyes. "Who?" "Isaac Lawson, miss. I found you collapsed from the fever about 10 miles outside of Yerington. You're at my ranch now. The doctor's been to see you." Recognition dawned slowly on her face. "My horse, safe in my stable along with your belongings." She nodded slightly, relief evident in her expression. "Thank you," she murmured before her eyes drifted closed again. Isaac continued his vigil through the night, watching as Winifred alternated between restless sleep and brief moments of consciousness. By dawn, her fever had begun to recede, and her breathing became deeper and more regular. Miss Abigail appeared at first light, insisting that Isaac get some rest while she took over. Reluctantly, he agreed, finding himself unexpectedly exhausted. "Call me if there's any change," he instructed before heading to his own room. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded Isaac. His thoughts kept returning to the woman in his guest room. There was something about Winifred James that intrigued him, perhaps the courage it must have taken for a woman alone to make such a journey, or the mystery of what had brought her to Yerington in the first place. When he returned to her room 3 hours later, Isaac found Winifred awake and significantly more lucid. Miss Abigail had helped her sit up against the pillows, and she was slowly sipping broth from a mug. "Mr. Lawson," Winifred acknowledged him, her voice stronger than before. "Miss Abigail has been telling me how you carried me for miles to bring me here. I owe you my life." Isaac felt unaccustomed heat rise to his face. "Anyone would have done the same, Miss James." "Winifred, please, and I doubt that very much." "Miss Abigail says we're 10 miles from where you found me." "The alternative wasn't acceptable," Isaac said simply, settling into the chair beside her bed. "Are you feeling stronger?" "Much, though still quite weak." She set down the mug, her hands trembling slightly from the effort. "I must apologize for imposing on your hospitality this way." "There's nothing to apologize for, but I admit to wondering what brings a young woman like yourself to this part of Nevada, traveling alone." Winifred's expression grew somber. "I've accepted a position as the new schoolteacher in Yerington. I was expected to arrive yesterday, in fact. I can send word to town explaining the circumstances," Isaac offered. "The previous teacher left rather suddenly, and the town's been without one for nearly a month. They'll understand the delay." "That would be very kind, thank you." Winifred hesitated. "I must ask, my belongings, all safe? Your trunk and bags are downstairs. I hope you don't mind, but Miss Abigail took the liberty of finding a nightgown for you." A blush colored Winifred's cheeks, making her look healthier than she had since Isaac found her. "Of course, please thank her for me." Again. Dr. Fletcher returned that afternoon and was pleased with Winifred's progress. "The fever's broken, which is the most important thing. But you're still weak from dehydration and exhaustion, young lady. I recommend at least 3 days of bed rest before you even think about continuing to town." Winifred looked dismayed. "But my position will still be there," Isaac interjected. "I've already sent Hank to inform the town council of your situation. They send their well wishes and insist you take all the time you need to recover." The relief on Winifred's face was evident. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson." "Isaac," he corrected with a small smile. "If I'm to call you Winifred, it's only fair." Over the next 2 days, Winifred's strength gradually returned. By the 3rd day, she was able to sit in a chair by the window, dressed in one of her own dresses that Miss Abigail had pressed for her. Isaac found himself making increasingly frequent visits to the guest room, bringing books from his modest library and sharing stories of the area. He learned that Winifred had come from Boston, where she had taught at a girls' school for 2 years after completing her own education. When asked why she had chosen to come west, a shadow passed over her face. "Sometimes one needs a fresh start," she said quietly. The advertisement for a teacher in Yerington promised fair pay and accommodations. It seemed providential at the time. Isaac sensed there was more to her story, but didn't press. He instead told her about his own journey west, how he'd left Pennsylvania after the death of his parents, determined to build something of his own. "I worked on 3 different ranches before I had enough saved to purchase this land," he explained. "It was nothing but dust and scrub then. Took 2 years to get the house built and the ranch operational." "It's impressive what you've accomplished," Winifred said sincerely. "You must be very proud." Isaac looked around thoughtfully. "I am, though sometimes I wonder if it's been worth the solitude." Their eyes met for a moment, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of kindred spirits, perhaps, both having chosen paths that led to isolation. By the end of the week, Dr. Fletcher declared Winifred fit to travel the short distance to town. Isaac offered to escort her himself, along with Hank to help with her belongings. "That's very kind of you," Winifred said as they prepared to depart. She stood on the porch, looking more like the capable schoolteacher she was meant to be, her golden hair neatly pinned beneath a modest hat. "I can't begin to thank you properly for everything you've done." "Your recovery is thanks enough," Isaac replied, surprising himself with the sincerity of his words. "Besides, I'd like to ensure you're properly settled in town." The journey to Yerington took just over an hour at a leisurely pace. Isaac was acutely aware of Winifred beside him on the wagon seat, her profile delicate against the backdrop of the Nevada landscape he had come to love. He found himself wondering if she would see the beauty in this harsh land as he did, or if she would soon long for the greenery and civilization of the East. Yerington was a small but growing town, with a main street boasting a general store, saloon, hotel, and a few other businesses. The schoolhouse stood at the far end, with a small attached residence for the teacher. As they pulled up, several people emerged from nearby buildings. "Word travels fast in small towns," Isaac explained as he helped Winifred down from the wagon. "I expect they've been anxious to meet their new teacher." A stout man with a well-trimmed beard approached them first. "Miss James, Walter Preston, head of the town council, we're mighty relieved to see you recovered from your ordeal and grateful to Mr. Lawson for his assistance." "Thank you, Mr. Preston. I apologize for the delay in my arrival." "Nonsense. The important thing is you're here now and in good health." Preston gestured toward the schoolhouse. "Your accommodations are ready, though basic. The school term begins on Monday, which gives you the weekend to settle in." As Hank unloaded her belongings, Isaac found himself reluctant to leave. There was something about Winifred James that had gotten under his skin during their week together. The thought of returning to his ranch without her presence felt strangely empty. "Well, Miss James," he said formally, aware of the curious eyes watching them, "I trust you'll find everything to your satisfaction. If you need anything at all—" "You've done more than enough, Mr. Lawson," Winifred replied, matching his formality though her eyes conveyed deeper gratitude. "I hope I'll have the opportunity to repay your kindness someday." Isaac nodded, tipped his hat, and turned to leave. As he and Hank headed back toward the ranch, he found himself looking back more than once at the diminishing figure of Winifred standing before her new home. "Fine lady, that Miss James," Hank commented as they rode. "Yes," Isaac agreed quietly. "She certainly is." The schoolhouse felt small and dusty after the spaciousness of Isaac's ranch house, but Winifred was determined to make it her own. The living quarters consisted of a modest bedroom, a small parlor, and a kitchen with a wood-burning stove. Simple, but adequate for a single schoolteacher. As she unpacked her belongings, Winifred found herself thinking about the enigmatic rancher who had saved her life. Isaac Lawson was unlike any man she had encountered in Boston, straightforward yet gentle, strong yet considerate. She touched the silver locket at her throat, a reminder of why she had fled east in the first place. A fresh start, she whispered to herself, returning to the task at hand. Over the weekend, Winifred prepared the schoolhouse for Monday's lessons and introduced herself to as many townspeople as she could. Everyone was welcoming, if a bit curious about the Eastern lady who had come to teach their children. Several mentioned Isaac's heroic rescue, making Winifred blush each time. By Monday morning, she felt reasonably prepared to meet her students. 15 children of varying ages filed into the schoolhouse, eyeing their new teacher with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Good morning," Winifred greeted them with a warm smile. "I am Miss James, your new teacher. I'm very much looking forward to learning all your names and helping you with your studies." The school day went better than she had anticipated. The children, though rambunctious, were eager to learn, and by the end of the day, Winifred felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't experienced in months. As she was closing up the schoolhouse, a knock at the door surprised her. Opening it, she found Isaac Lawson standing there, hat in hand. "Mr. Lawson, this is unexpected." "Isaac," he reminded her with a small smile, "I was in town on business and thought I'd check how you're settling in. Please come in." Winifred stepped aside, suddenly conscious of her appearance after a long day with the children. "I've just finished my first day of teaching." "And how did it go?" Isaac asked, following her into the schoolroom. "Wonderfully, actually. The children are bright and mostly eager to learn. A few troublemakers, of course, but nothing I haven't handled before." Isaac's eyes roamed around the schoolroom, noting the neat rows of desks and the primers laid out for the next day's lessons. "You seem at home already." "I do love teaching," Winifred admitted, "even in such different circumstances from what I'm used to. Different better or different worse?" She considered the question thoughtfully. "Just different. The children here have different life experiences, different concerns. Many of them help with ranch work or in family businesses. Their education needs are practical." Isaac nodded. "Not much call for Latin and philosophy out here." "Perhaps not, but reading, writing, mathematics, and history are valuable anywhere." Winifred hesitated, then added, "Would you care for some tea? It's the least I can offer after everything you've done." "I'd like that," Isaac said, following her into her small living quarters. As Winifred prepared the tea, Isaac took in her modest accommodations. The small parlor had already been transformed by feminine touches: a crocheted doily on the small table, a vase of wildflowers, and books neatly arranged on a shelf. "It's not much," Winifred said, noticing his appraisal. "But it will serve. It suits you," Isaac replied. "Simple but elegant." They sat together, the conversation flowing easily as it had during her recovery. Isaac told her about his cattle business and the challenges of ranching in Nevada. Winifred shared anecdotes from her first day of teaching. As the afternoon light began to fade, Isaac reluctantly stood to leave. "I should be getting back. Got an early start tomorrow." "Of course. Thank you for checking on me." At the door, Isaac paused. "There's a social at the church on Saturday evening. Most of the town attends. Might be a good way for you to meet more folks." "That sounds lovely," Winifred replied. Perhaps I could escort you, since you're still new to town." The invitation hung in the air between them, weighted with possibilities neither was ready to acknowledge. "I would appreciate that, thank you," Winifred said softly. Isaac's smile was warm as he placed his hat back on his head. "I'll call for you at 6 then." As she watched him walk away, Winifred felt a flutter of anticipation in her chest that had nothing to do with meeting the townspeople, and everything to do with spending more time with Isaac Lawson. The week passed quickly, as Winifred settled into her teaching routine. The children were responsive to her methods, and she found herself enjoying the challenge of adapting her teaching to their diverse needs and abilities. Several parents came to meet her, expressing gratitude for her dedication to their children's education. By Saturday, Winifred was looking forward to the social with equal parts excitement and nervousness. She chose her best dress, a modest blue gown with lace trim at the collar and cuffs, and arranged her hair in a simple but elegant style. Isaac arrived precisely at 6, dressed in what was clearly his Sunday best. His eyes widened appreciatively when Winifred opened the door. "Miss James, you look beautiful," he said with honest admiration. "Thank you, and please, when we're not in public, I'd prefer Winifred." "Winifred," he repeated, offering his arm. "Shall we?" The church hall was decorated with lanterns and wildflowers, with tables of food prepared by the women of the congregation. A small band played lively tunes, and couples were already dancing. Isaac introduced Winifred to those she hadn't yet met, including his nearest neighbors and business associates. She was struck by the respect evident in how people addressed him, not merely politeness, but genuine regard. "Would you care to dance?" Isaac asked as the band struck up a waltz. Winifred hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." Isaac's hand was warm at her waist as he guided her into the dance. For a rancher, he moved with unexpected grace, and Winifred found herself relaxing into his lead. "You dance well," she commented, surprised. "My mother insisted on lessons before I left Pennsylvania, said no son of hers would embarrass her at social functions, even if he was heading west." His smile held a touch of sadness at the memory. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. Isaac's eyes met hers, and for a moment they were alone in the crowded room, connected by something deeper than the dance. The spell was broken when the music ended, and they were drawn into conversation with others. Throughout the evening, however, Winifred was conscious of Isaac's presence nearby, his attention returning to her despite the demands of sociability. As the evening drew to a close, Isaac escorted Winifred back to the schoolhouse. The night was cool and clear, the stars brilliantly visible in the desert sky. "I never saw stars like this in Boston," Winifred remarked, tilting her head back to look at the vast expanse above them. "One of the blessings of the West," Isaac agreed, "though it can make a person feel mighty small." "Or part of something much larger," Winifred countered softly. They reached her door too soon, and Winifred found herself reluctant to end the evening. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" Isaac shook his head regretfully. "Better not. People talk in small towns, and your reputation as the schoolteacher is important." Winifred knew he was right, but the disappointment must have shown on her face. "However," Isaac continued, "I would very much like to call on you again, properly." Her heart quickened. "I would like that too. Sunday after church, perhaps. We could have dinner at the hotel restaurant, very respectable." "That sounds perfect." Isaac took her hand and with old-world formality raised it to his lips. "Good night, Winifred." "Good night, Isaac," she replied, her skin tingling where his lips had brushed it. As she prepared for bed that night, Winifred caught herself humming one of the tunes from the social. She stopped, suddenly sobered by the realization of what was happening. She was developing feelings for Isaac Lawson, feelings she had not anticipated when she fled Boston to escape the aftermath of a broken engagement. Her hand went to the locket at her throat, where a small portrait of her former fiancé, Robert, remained. She had been unable to part with it, despite the pain he had caused her by choosing another woman, a woman with better connections and a larger dowry. A fresh start, she reminded herself again, removing the locket and placing it in her jewelry box for the first time since arriving in Nevada. Sunday dinner at the hotel restaurant was the first of many respectable outings Isaac and Winifred shared over the coming weeks. They attended church together, went on chaperoned picnics with other couples from town, and Isaac even sat in on one of her classes, claiming an interest in education but clearly more interested in watching her teach. As September gave way to October, the desert air grew cooler, and Winifred found herself increasingly drawn to the quiet rancher who had saved her life. His thoughtfulness, his integrity, and his gentle strength appealed to her in ways Robert's polished charm never had. For his part, Isaac discovered in Winifred a companion who challenged his mind and warmed his heart. Her dedication to her students, her courage in starting a new life alone in the West, and her genuine appreciation for the beauty of his beloved Nevada endeared her to him more each day. One crisp October afternoon, Isaac invited Winifred to ride out to his ranch. "Miss Abigail has been asking about you," he explained, "and I thought you might enjoy seeing the place in better circumstances than your first visit." With the school day ended early for a town meeting, Winifred readily agreed. The ride to the ranch was pleasant, the desert landscape painted in the warm hues of autumn. Winifred found herself admiring the vastness of the land, so different from the crowded streets of Boston. "It grows on you, doesn't it?" Isaac asked, noticing her expression. "It does. There's an honesty to it, no pretense, just the land as it is, beautiful and harsh all at once." "That's exactly it," Isaac said, looking at her with warm appreciation. "Most Easterners never see past the harshness." At the ranch, Miss Abigail welcomed Winifred with a warm embrace. "Look at you now. A far cry from the poor thing Mr. Lawson carried in half dead from fever. You're positively blooming," Winifred laughed, touched by the housekeeper's genuine affection. "Thanks in no small part to your excellent care. Come see what Mr. Lawson's been working on," Miss Abigail said, leading Winifred toward the back of the house while Isaac took care of the horses. The housekeeper showed Winifred the improvements Isaac had made since her stay: an expanded garden, new furniture in the parlor, and freshly painted walls in several rooms. "Never seen him so busy with the house before," Miss Abigail commented with a knowing glance. "Almost like he's trying to make it more welcoming, if you take my meaning." Winifred blushed, but was saved from responding by Isaac's arrival. He gave them a tour of the ranch operations, proudly showing Winifred the cattle, the new barn, and the spring-fed pond that made his property more valuable than most in the area. As sunset approached, they sat on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the sky turn brilliant shades of orange and pink. "I can see why you love it here," Winifred said softly. "There's a peace to it." "There is," Isaac agreed. "Though it's been more peaceful since a certain schoolteacher came to Yerington." Their eyes met, and Winifred felt the now familiar flutter in her chest. Before either could speak, however, Hank appeared with news that one of the pregnant heifers was having trouble. "I'm sorry," Isaac said, rising quickly. "I need to see to this." "Of course," Winifred assured him. "Animals don't wait for convenient moments. Miss Abigail can see you back to town if I'm delayed. Don't worry about me. Do what you need to do." Isaac hesitated, then impulsively took her hand. "You're a remarkable woman, Winifred James." She watched him stride away, his tall figure silhouetted against the sunset, and acknowledged to herself what she had been feeling for weeks. She was falling in love with Isaac Lawson. The heifer's difficulties kept Isaac occupied well into the night, and as promised, Miss Abigail drove Winifred back to town. The older woman used the opportunity to sing Isaac's praises and subtly probe Winifred's feelings toward him. "He's a good man, Miss James. The best I know. Been alone too long, if you ask me." "He's been very kind to me," Winifred replied carefully. "More than kind, I'd say. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Miss Abigail gave her a sidelong glance. "And if you don't mind my saying so, you look at him the same way." Winifred couldn't deny it. "He's different from men I've known before. Western men often are. Less polish, perhaps, but more substance." The words resonated with Winifred, who had learned the hard way that polish could conceal a lack of character. Robert had been charming, cultured, and ultimately faithless. Isaac was straightforward, occasionally rough around the edges, but unfailingly honorable. November brought colder weather and preparations for Thanksgiving. The schoolchildren were excited about the upcoming holiday, and Winifred organized a special program for parents to attend. When Isaac arrived for the performance, she felt a rush of pleasure at seeing him among the parents and townspeople. The children recited poems, sang songs, and presented essays about what they were thankful for. Afterward, as the attendees enjoyed refreshments, Isaac approached Winifred. "That was impressive," he said. "You've accomplished a lot with these children in a short time." "They're eager to learn," Winifred replied, glowing with pride in her students. "I was wondering," Isaac said, his voice dropping slightly. "Would you consider joining me for Thanksgiving dinner at the ranch? Miss Abigail is planning quite a feast, and she specifically asked me to invite you." "I'd love to," Winifred answered without hesitation. "But are you sure I wouldn't be intruding on your family time?" Isaac's expression softened. "Winifred, you should know by now that my family is Hank and Miss Abigail, and they both think as highly of you as I do." The implication of his words hung between them, laden with possibility. Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and cold. Isaac arrived promptly to collect Winifred, helping her into the wagon with careful hands. She had dressed warmly in her best winter dress, a deep green wool that complemented her eyes. "You look beautiful," Isaac said, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "Thank you, and thank you for inviting me today." The ranch looked festive, with pine boughs decorating the porch and windows. Inside, delicious aromas filled the air as Miss Abigail put the finishing touches on their feast. The meal was abundant and joyful, with Hank entertaining them with stories from his youth in Missouri, and Miss Abigail insisting everyone take second helpings of everything. Winifred felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced since leaving her family home in Boston. After the meal, Hank retreated for a nap, and Miss Abigail shooed Isaac and Winifred from the kitchen, insisting she preferred to clean up alone. "Would you like to see the view from the hill behind the house?" Isaac suggested. "It's particularly fine on clear days like today." Bundled in coats and scarves, they walked up the gentle slope behind the ranch house. At the top, Winifred gasped at the panoramic Vista Mountains in the distance, the ranch buildings below, and the vast desert landscape stretching toward the horizon. "It's magnificent," she breathed. "It is," Isaac agreed, though when she turned, she found him looking at her rather than the view. He took a deep breath, as though gathering courage. "Winifred, there's something I need to say." Her heart quickened as he took her gloved hands in his. "I never expected to find someone like you out here. When I saw you collapse that day, I had no idea that the woman I carried through the desert would come to mean so much to me." His blue eyes held hers with unwavering intensity. "I've fallen in love with you, Winifred James. I know it might seem sudden, or that perhaps I'm not the sort of man you envisioned for yourself," but Winifred placed her fingers gently against his lips, stopping his words. "Isaac, the man I once envisioned for myself proved to be an illusion. What I've found in you is far more real and precious." She took a shaky breath. "I love you too. I think I began falling in love with you while I was recovering at your home, watching your kindness and integrity in every action." Joy transformed Isaac's features. He pulled her close, one hand cradling her face with infinite tenderness. "May I kiss you, Winifred, please?" she whispered. His lips met hers in a kiss that began gently but deepened as she responded, her arms encircling his neck. The cold air around them was forgotten as they shared their first embrace, both marveling at the unexpected gift they had found in each other. When they finally parted, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I know it's soon, perhaps too soon, but I need to ask, would you consider becoming my wife? Making this place your home, building a life here with me?" Winifred's heart soared at his words. "It doesn't feel too soon when you know something is right," she said. "Yes, Isaac. Yes, I would be honored to be your wife." His smile was radiant as he kissed her again, then lifted her off her feet in a joyful embrace that made her laugh with delight. Hand in hand, they returned to the house to share their news with Miss Abigail, who responded with tears of joy and immediate plans for the wedding. Hank, awakened by the commotion, offered his gruff congratulations and a rare smile. In the following days, news of their engagement spread through Yerington. Most of the townspeople had observed the growing attachment between the rancher and the schoolteacher, and received the announcement with pleasure and approval. The school board, however, presented an unexpected complication. "I'm afraid we must accept your resignation, effective upon your marriage," Walter Preston informed Winifred. "The board has a policy against employing married women as teachers." Though disappointed, Winifred understood this was common practice. "I'll complete the term, of course," she assured him. "The children shouldn't have their education disrupted before a replacement can be found." "We appreciate that, Miss James, and may I offer my personal congratulations. Lawson is one of our finest citizens." Isaac was indignant when Winifred told him about having to resign. "That's ridiculous. You're an excellent teacher, married or not." "It's the way things are, Isaac," she said pragmatically. "Besides, I'll have plenty to occupy me as your wife and the mistress of the ranch." His expression softened. "Our ranch. Everything I have will be yours too, Winifred." They decided on a Christmas wedding, giving them just a month to prepare. Winifred wrote to her family in Boston, explaining her whirlwind romance and inviting them, though she knew the distance and short notice made their attendance unlikely. She received a warm letter in return, expressing surprise but sincere happiness for her, along with a promise to visit in the spring. As December progressed, Winifred divided her time between teaching, wedding preparations, and learning more about ranch operations from Isaac. He insisted she understand the business side of their future life together. "I want us to be true partners," he explained as they reviewed the ranch ledgers one evening. "Your education and intelligence are assets, Winifred. I'd be a fool not to benefit from them." His respect for her mind and abilities only deepened her love for him. In Boston, Robert had indulged her teaching as a charming hobby, never taking her intellectual interests seriously. Isaac, by contrast, valued her thoughts and sought her opinions on matters ranging from cattle breeding to investments. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, cold but clear, with fresh snow decorating the mountains in the distance. The church in Yerington was filled with townsfolk and ranchers from the surrounding area, all eager to witness the union of two people who had become well respected in the community. Winifred wore a gown of ivory satin that Miss Abigail had helped her alter from her best dress. With no family present, she asked Dr. Fletcher to walk her down the aisle, acknowledging his role in saving her life that fateful day in August. Isaac waited at the altar, his expression a mixture of awe and adoration as Winifred approached. His voice was steady as he spoke his vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish her all the days of his life. Winifred's voice trembled slightly with emotion as she made the same promises in return. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Isaac's kiss was tender yet possessive, a promise of the life they would build together. The church erupted in applause as they turned to face their friends as Mr. and Mrs. Lawson for the first time. The celebration afterward was held at the hotel, with food, music, and dancing lasting well into the evening. As they finally prepared to leave for the ranch, now Winifred's home, as well the townspeople showered them with rice and good wishes. The ranch house had been transformed in their absence. Miss Abigail and Hank had decorated the parlor with evergreen boughs and candles, and a cheerful fire burned in the fireplace. Most touchingly, they had moved Winifred's personal belongings from the schoolhouse and arranged them throughout the home, making it truly hers. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawson," Isaac said softly as he carried her across the threshold. Winifred's heart swelled with happiness. "Home," she repeated, savoring the word. "Our home." Later, as they lay together in the moonlight filtering through the bedroom window, Winifred marveled at how drastically her life had changed in just 4 months. From collapsing in the desert, near death from fever, to finding love and a new life with the man who had saved her. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on her bare shoulder. "How fortunate I am," she replied, snuggling closer to him. "If I hadn't fallen ill that day, if you hadn't found me." "I believe we would have found each other somehow," Isaac said with conviction. "Some things are meant to be." Winifred smiled, thinking of the long journey that had brought her to this moment. "I think perhaps you're right." The winter months passed in newlywed bliss as Winifred and Isaac adjusted to married life. She completed her teaching commitment at the end of December, saying emotional goodbyes to her students. To her delight, Isaac suggested they convert one of the unused rooms at the ranch into a small classroom where she could tutor children from neighboring ranches who found it difficult to attend the town school regularly. "You're a born teacher," he told her. "I wouldn't want you to give that up entirely." By spring, Winifred had fully embraced her role as a rancher's wife. She learned to ride better, helped with calving season, and kept the ranch's books with meticulous care. The business flourished under their joint management, with Isaac's practical knowledge complemented by Winifred's organizational skills. In April, Winifred's parents and younger sister arrived from Boston for a month-long visit. Initially apprehensive about the harsh Western environment, they were won over by the beauty of the land and, more importantly, by seeing Winifred's happiness with Isaac. "I've never seen you so radiant," her mother confessed one afternoon as they sat on the porch, watching Isaac and Winifred's father inspect the cattle in a nearby pasture. "I was worried when you left Boston so suddenly, but now I understand. You found where you belong." "I have," Winifred agreed, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen, where the first signs of new life were making themselves known. She hadn't yet told Isaac about the baby, waiting for the perfect moment to share the news. That evening, after her family retired to their rooms, Winifred and Isaac sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Your father asked my intentions regarding expanding the ranch," Isaac said, his arm comfortably around her shoulders. "I think he's impressed with what we've built here." "And what did you tell him?" "That I plan to acquire the Morrison property to the east if they decide to sell. It would give us access to more water and grazing land." He kissed the top of her head. "I want to build something lasting, something we can pass on to our children someday. Winifred's heart leaped at the perfect opening. "Someday might be sooner than you think," she said, taking his hand and placing it over her stomach. Isaac went still, then turned to look at her with dawning wonder. "Winifred, are you saying?" "Yes," she confirmed, her eyes shining with happy tears. "We're going to have a baby likely around November." With a joyous laugh, Isaac gathered her into his arms, kissing her with unrestrained delight. "A baby, our baby." His hand returned to her stomach, as though he could already feel the tiny life growing within. "I promise you both, I'll be the best husband and father I can possibly be." "I know you will," Winifred said, touching his beloved face. "Our child is so fortunate to have you as a father." As they sat together under the vast Nevada sky, Winifred reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. Her collapse in the desert, Isaac carrying her those 10 miles to safety, their growing bond during her recovery, and now their marriage and coming child. What had seemed like disaster had become the greatest blessing of her life. "I was thinking," Isaac said, breaking into her thoughts. "If it's a boy, perhaps we could name him after your father, William Lawson." Winifred tested the name. "It has a nice sound to it, and if it's a girl," Isaac considered for a moment. "What about Elizabeth? After my mother, Elizabeth Lawson," Winifred nodded. "Perfect for our daughter." The months of Winifred's pregnancy passed with anticipation and preparation. Isaac insisted on hiring additional help around the ranch, so Winifred wouldn't overtax herself, though she remained active in running the household and tutoring the handful of children who now came to the ranch for lessons 3 times a week. In late October, as her time grew near, Dr. Fletcher arranged to stay at the ranch, not wanting to risk being unavailable when labor began. Isaac's anxiety increased as the due date approached, his protective instincts in full force. "I've delivered dozens of babies, Isaac," Dr. Fletcher assured him. "Your wife is young and healthy. Everything will be fine." Labor began on a crisp November morning, almost exactly 1 year after Isaac had proposed. Miss Abigail and Dr. Fletcher took charge, sending an increasingly frantic Isaac to wait downstairs. Hour after hour passed, with Hank doing his best to distract the expectant father. Finally, as the sun was setting, a baby's cry echoed through the house. Isaac bolted for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, only to be intercepted by Dr. Fletcher at the bedroom door. "Congratulations," the doctor said with a broad smile. "You have a fine, healthy son." Isaac entered the bedroom on unsteady legs. Winifred lay propped against pillows, her face tired but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up as he approached, her smile more beautiful than he had ever seen it. "Come meet your son," she said softly. "William Isaac Lawson." Isaac sat carefully on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed with emotion as he gazed at the tiny face of his son. "He's perfect," he whispered, reaching out to touch the baby's cheek with a gentle finger. "Just like his mother. Would you like to hold him?" With reverent care, Isaac took his son into his arms, marveling at how small and perfect he was. "Hello, William," he murmured. "I'm your father, and I'm going to teach you everything about this land and how to be a good man." Winifred watched them with her heart so full it seemed it might burst. In that moment, the memory of her collapse in the desert seemed like a distant dream, or perhaps the first step on a path that was always meant to lead her here, to this man, this child, this life. "I love you," she said, reaching out to touch Isaac's arm. "Both of you so very much." Isaac looked at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "And I love you, Winifred Lawson, more than I ever thought possible." As night fell over the Nevada desert, the little family remained together in the warm glow of the lamplight, beginning their new chapter in the story that had started with a fever. a collapse, and a cowboy who had carried a stranger to safety. In the years that followed, the Lawson ranch prospered and grew. Isaac acquired the neighboring property as planned, expanding their holdings significantly. Winifred's classroom became an official small school, recognized by the county and attended by children from several surrounding ranches. William was joined by a sister, Elizabeth, 2 years later, and another brother, Joseph, 2 years after that. The children thrived in the freedom of ranch life, growing strong and capable under their parents' loving guidance. Winifred's parents visited regularly, eventually purchasing a small house in Yerington, where they spent winters away from the harsh Boston weather. They delighted in their grandchildren and developed a genuine fondness for the Western lifestyle they had once considered so foreign. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, Isaac surprised Winifred with a special gift, a small, leather-bound book in which he had written their story, beginning with finding her collapsed in the desert and carrying her those 10 miles to safety. "So our children and grandchildren will know how our family began," he explained as she leafed through the pages, tears in her eyes. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard, Winifred leaned against Isaac's shoulder, content in the life they had built together. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't taken that particular route home that day?" she asked. "If you hadn't found me," Isaac's arm tightened around her. "I try not to think about it, the idea of you out there alone." He shook his head. "I believe some things are meant to be, Winifred. I was meant to find you, to carry you home, to fall in love with you." "Home," Winifred repeated, looking out at the ranch that had once seemed so alien and was now the center of her world. "You know, when I left Boston, I thought I was just running away. I never imagined I was running toward something so much better." Isaac kissed her tenderly. "To think it all began with a fever and 10 miles of desert. And a cowboy brave enough to carry a stranger to safety," Winifred added with a loving smile. As the sun set over the Nevada mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Winifred Lawson counted her blessings: her loving husband, their beautiful children, the prosperous ranch, and the unexpected journey that had brought her to this perfect happiness. What had begun as the worst day of her life had led to everything she had ever wanted but never knew to dream of. Sometimes, she reflected, the greatest blessings come disguised as misfortune. And sometimes, salvation comes in the form of a cowboy who refuses to leave a stranger to die alone in the desert.